Welcome to the Look Good Move Well podcast.
It's starting to sound a lot more like CrossFit than it is USAW.
Yeah.
If you're just tuning in right now, we're talking about the drama with the United States of America Weightlifting Association. There's a big meet happening next week, and they have just changed the format of how the lifters are going to be warming up and competing. And there historically has always been a separation of warm-ups behind the curtain and then a lifting platform for competitive lifts out in front of the spectators. And apparently now all of the platforms, warm-up and competition platforms, are going to be all in the same space, all visible to the audience. And so it's going to be a spectator frenzy.
It's got like Donald Trump busting into the Miss America changing room vibes for me.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, man. Let's not talk about the Donald right now. All right. Any other banter that feels appropriate at this point?
Maybe we should move on to our topic.
Let's move on to the topic.
Okay. Well, we got a listener submission message, which we adore.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Davey, for writing in. Davey says he's very thankful for the impact you and the FBB team have had on his life. You're so welcome, Davey. He was listening to the
By the way, this DM came directly to you, not to me.
No, it was an email to you.
An email, I see. Okay.
I think.
Got it.
Okay. But sometimes the DMs come to me, which is even better because I'm normally hard to find.
We got to get your Instagram get your Instagram button on the homepage of all of our social media accounts on our website.
I'm learning how to emerge from behind the scenes.
Yes.
Okay. Although I was the demo model this week.
Yeah. I heard.
Emergency demo video filming.
I don't know what kind of emergency we got ourselves into, or Satya felt compelled to jump in front of the camera, but I definitely was out on Wednesday at my daughter's graduation, and I read about this on Slack, and I like, a little part of me inside was just like so sad and depressed. I was like, oh my God, I am completely replaceable now. The last thing I was holding on to, I was the demo guy, and now everybody was pretty pumped about the comments that were going back and forth. Everyone was so stoked that Satya was the demo for functional bodybuilding.
I was not that stoked because it's actually really hard. You get out there and all of a sudden you're like, wait, how do I do this?
Yeah. I came back to a list of like, we didn't know how to do this one, so you can do it on Friday.
Yeah.
There was just one. You nailed everything.
Yeah. Okay.
You and Nate combined.
That's
power.
The only reason I jumped in is because the motivator was that, my video guy was stressed about getting his deadline met. And if it's someone on my team who needs something, I am going to make it happen for them.
Oh man, we really go the extra mile when Nate gets stressed.
Oh yeah, if Nate's stressed, we're all hustling.
Like if a hard drive blows up, I mean, hey, whatever it takes,
whatever we need, whoever we need to pay off.
Let me call in my friends. I got a couple friends down at Marin Sanitary. They can take care of some things.
Okay,
coming back
to the topic,
back.
Davey. We're back to you, Davey. All right. He was listening to the podcast where we were talking about measuring fitness with tech and how relevant that is.
Mm-hmm.
And it led him to think about his nutritional practices. When I started Persist, I also started using the RP diet app, which led me very quickly to understand I was undernourished, and that was causing my plateau. Very common. When I started using this protocol, he was using RP, I instantly saw progress from getting adequate calories paired with your amazing training program. I'm now 2.5 years in, feeling a little unhappy with my body, if I'm being honest. Just the struggle of days where I'm not happy with my gains, and other days I'm feeling a little puffier than I like. And the back and forth makes me want to switch up my nutritional protocol, which I've followed religiously in this time period. But then the fear sets in with thoughts like, well, this is what got you here. why would you deviate? So he wants to see what our thoughts were on that predicament.
Man, I'm so glad you read that again, because I kind of had forgotten the full context of what he had shared. But it's similar to a couple DMs that I was responding to today, where or in the last couple of days, similar kind of like, I've had this, I've been doing this for some period of time, like I've been pretty successful on this, and I'm nervous about changing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it really brings up for me, it's like, well, are we supposed to eat the exact same thing in the exact same way forever? And we've talked about this in the past, but there's something real about like the seasonality of food, and just the seasons of life and the seasons of the year, and how our energy levels change, how our energy demands change, how our activity levels are changing, what foods are, in season. And when we think about like what's in season, it's like, well, what's in season in California right now, and what's in season in like, Argentina, these are different, the totally different hemispheres, different climates, like, and with like, globalization and how food can be transported from, Japan to California overnight, and we can get things from Mexico like any time of year, and things are, we're constantly eating foods that are, can be out of season, can be local or really far away. So how we're supposed to eat seasonally and with kind of what's available in our local environment and climate, because that's what we evolved, only being able to access food that was right there in front of us, not, hey, like I'm a little hungry, I'm going to call something in from, Mexico to, feed that little craving I have for mango when it's December. It's like, well, that's not what we're supposed to be having in December. But there are a lot of reasons why, just logically and practically, our food and the way we consume and the way that we nourish ourselves should change, like every year, every few months. Like it shouldn't be the same. And we're in a world where we could eat the same thing every single day, and have it prepared in the exact same way and never deviate, because we can pretty much access food any time of year, anything that we want. So it kind of raises this, like, people find themselves in this challenging position where they're like, oh my God, I was told by this app that this is how I'm supposed to eat. Or I had a coach that laid out this meal plan for me, and it was a 8-week meal plan, and it worked great. So I'm going to do it for the next 8 weeks and the next 8 weeks. And then a year goes by and they're on the same 8-week meal plan, and it's the same foods. It's the same amount of calories. It's the same amount of everything. They've never deviated from it. I fell victim to this when I had my first gains, or my first, not even gains, like when I got ripped for the first time. I think I've shared this diet specifically on here, but it was like, it was very absurd. It was very unusual. Mm-hmm. There were some very odd things. And it was like, in hindsight, looking at it, it was very much a contrived, diet to try and hit certain macronutrient amounts, with palatable things. It had like, yogurt, cottage cheese, protein, chia seed, flaxseed mixtures. So this like stuff that looked really odd, but it tasted amazing because it was like all these, flavored protein powders. It had like me eating cottage cheese and Fruit Loops at one meal with protein powder. It had like a American craft cheese fat-free singles, like those little ones that are like basically made out of like, I don't know if it's real food. Like,
yeah,
I'm
like
not
what's
sure.
the difference between the plastic wrapper and the cheese inside?
Yeah, it's about the same.
Yeah.
Like, I forgot to take the plastic off. I didn't even notice it was there.
Yeah.
I was like eating that on like spelt, like this like high quality spelt bread. I'm like, this is so odd. Like thinking back, I'm like, I bought the most expensive bread in the store, and then I bought these craft singles,
the cheapest cheese.
Yeah, and these were the soggy salad days,
Yep.
and 6 egg whites, 1 egg yolk with just like a big old thing of wet tomatoes on it,
Yeah.
just a very contrived, but I was like, and it got me results. And then I was like, okay, well, this is how I got to eat forever. And I kept eating like that, like well beyond a 6-pack. Cause I was like, oh my gosh, if I eat anything else, I'm going to lose all my aesthetics.
Yeah. Well, there are a couple things that really strike me about what Davey's message said. And I'm on this big kick around reducing uncertainty and how to do that in our messaging, and how uncertainty just plays a huge role in the fear that humans have in day-to-day life in making these types of decisions. Because I feel like in Davey's story, he has followed a very common path of, I want to improve my nutrition, and so I'm going to follow the exact prescription, and then it's going to get me this great result. And I've learned something like, I'm undernourishing, and so now I'm certain that if I eat this template type of plan, it's going to get me this type of result. Now that I maybe want to tweak a few things, I have the fear of uncertainty of whether the new thing I try is going to work or not, because it's all about what is the prescribed plan that's going to get me the results I want, versus I am now going to understand how the whole thing works and thus reduce my uncertainty that way, because I'm going to feel confident in knowing generally how nutrition levers can push and pull and create different types of outcomes.
That's deep. Yeah. Yeah, it is. What's the lever you're going to pull to try and, minimize your uncertainty? And I think that there are times where following a strict meal plan and eating the same thing every single day helps a lot. It's like you got a lot of uncertainty in your life, and this is one thing that you can just sort of, I can control this, I can limit the variables, and that creates some certainty that I'm going to have some outcome. And that's something I fall back on from time to time too. And then there comes a time where now he's having some like uncertainty around his body and how he's feeling and the outcomes. And so like it means questioning what the systems that he has in place, how those are supporting or not supporting what he's actually feeling on a day-to-day basis. So now I would argue that like if he's having these recurring feelings of like, I don't feel like I'm getting the progress that I want, my body is feeling puffy some days, like I'm not totally psyched on how I'm looking and feeling right now, then it absolutely is time to start to question the plan that is like this concrete thing that is there that has gotten you so far. It's like, yeah, it got you really far. And, it's like if you're learning to do a muscle up, like you did the muscle up row for like a year and it got you to your first strict muscle up. It's like, okay, well now it's time to start training the strict muscle up. Like you're going to keep doing the muscle up row for another year. Like that's not necessarily going to be the thing that you need right now to, just because it got you to where you were at doesn't mean it's not time to like potentially evolve and move past that, because you're having signs that's not totally working for you right now. You have an intuitive gut sense that like, hey, I'm not really loving every aspect of this. It's time to shake it up.
Yeah. So I think, what could help alleviate some fear of trying something different, something new that gets you into the next phase? And I think, what's the worst case scenario for Davey? It's like, okay, I'm gonna try something else. I'm gonna go off the script. And what is it? I'm going to eat delicious food, and all of a sudden I'm not going to be able to control myself, and I'm going to just go off the rails and gain a ton of weight and just go in the wrong direction? Or is it that I'm not going to know what I should eat? So, how would you guide someone like that in a situation where they could start to deviate, but do so with a little bit more confidence in the results that they might see?
Well, I think if you're going to think about that worst case scenario, it's like, let me break the script for a little while, go off and try something very intentionally to try and make a positive improvement. If it doesn't work, the script is always there to come back to. Like you really can always fall back on it. Mm-hmm. There's also like something else to maybe give some confidence is, let's say, if we could break down Davy's script and we could look at what he's doing, we could look at making like one change, and kind of slowly pulling back, the reins on his nutrition. And that could be like, okay, I see you've been going pretty low fat for quite some time. Let's bump up your fat by 20%. Let's get you some more fat in your diet, and let's see how that impacts you. Somebody like my personal experience with this is like, I was following a very strict 16 and 8 or, 16 hours of fasting every single day for a long time. And in that period of time, I had some really great results and things that I loved about it. Towards the tail end, I was like, man, this is not working for me. Like I'm feeling like undernourished. I'm feeling like this is becoming an obstacle to like my lifestyle with like my family and eating in like social environments. Like I'm the guy that's like always at family dinner and just like drinking a glass of water and everyone else is eating. Like this is not feeling right. It was feeling pretty like so significant that I was like, I got to make some change. It's like, and the thought of like cutting it off completely was like very scary to me. It's like, well, I don't want to just like not do this, so I took one small step. I was like, okay, these 2 days a week, like I'm not worrying about it. I'm just going to like spread out, like there's no time restriction, and, taking the one step, like it's just this 1 day a week or these 2 days a week, and then just starting to relax a little bit. Maybe that's for a month. And I'm like, oh, nothing bad happened. And actually it positively impacted my life in this way. Mm-hmm. Okay, now I'm going to go to day, 3 days, 4 days, and find like where is the sweet spot for you to sort of relinquish some control or to deviate from what you've done in the past and still see, the benefits and improvements that you were hoping to find by making a change.
What's a good window of time if you are making a change like that, if you are afraid that it like maybe there could be, because I know sometimes when you change your nutrition, you do gain a little bit of weight sometimes, or your body's it needs an adjustment period. So if you are going to make a careful change that's a little bit more intentional, how long should you wait it out to really make an assessment of how it's working?
I mean, I wish I could just give like one answer for everything, but I think it kind of depends on like the magnitude of the change. Mm-hmm. If you change a bunch of things all at once, like things are going to feel pretty chaotic, and you probably need a month at least for it to all level out and start to like take shape into like whatever it's going to be. So let's say Davy's like, I'm going to change my time restricted window. I'm going to increase my calories. I'm going to start eating different types of foods than I was eating before. And I'm going to change my macros from, this percentage of carbs to this percentage of carbs. Well, that you just changed 4 things, and that could really make, for a big swing in how your body is interacting with food. And so, yeah, like take a month to really let those things settle in. And then at the month mark, sort of, okay, now my body is settled into this. How am I feeling? What's my body doing? How's it looking? How's it performing? You can start to make some of those, global assessments of how things have gone. Mm-hmm. I think really though, when it comes to food, the things that people are going to experience the biggest like changes from is changing their total amounts of calories up or down. And by like those things will, if nothing changes and you just change your calories up and down, that you should see a pretty quick, it's a short time frame to when you can start to realize like, hey, this is having an impact on me. 1 to 2 weeks. And it's like, okay, if you cut your calories by, 20%, and after a week and a half, 2 weeks, like you haven't lost any weight, like then you didn't really cut your calories that much. That's kind of a, that's the kind of turnaround time. The other one would be like, if somebody has like dramatically changed they're the one thing that, you know, dramatic change is like the amount of protein that they're having, then that's another area that people are going to see some pretty quick results.
Yeah.
Right. So again, it's just like you're changing one thing, like you're not eating the same calories, but you just up your protein, same calories. You should see a pretty quick change, like within, you know, days to a week and a half, and know if that was something that was valuable and positive for you. The other changes I talked about, like timing of nutrients or changing macro profiles and things like that, just might need to take a little bit, you know, more time to sort of level out, because those things indirectly, you know, are going to maybe impact how many calories you have in a day. So I don't see people that make changes that are super scientific. They're like, I kept my calories exactly the same. I did everything the same. I like charted everything. I just like adjusted my, you know, my window of eating, or I adjusted this one, like it tends not to be the case.
Yeah.
So when you control for calories or, you know, protein macros, that's when people start to see, I think, shorter term changes. If you're sort of changing the lifestyle or the type of food or all these other things around it, then you end up also changing kind of your amount of energy that you're eating, like the calories you're consuming, which then makes it a little harder to see those immediate changes. There's a lot of variables that are shifting all of a sudden, and you kind of have to wait it out a little bit more.
Yeah. So how should someone decide if they're going to make a change, especially one that I think is in a bit of that danger zone of maybe I'm about to make an all or nothing leap here. I think that's the trap that a lot of people get stuck in, especially with very prescribed nutrition plans that tell you exactly what to eat.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, I can do this all approach, and then I'm just not sure what the next step might be. And first of all, how do I decide whether I'm ready to make that choice? And second, you know, what's the first step if I'm going to leave the script behind?
Yeah. I mean, it's very, I mean, I think it just comes down to like your pain tolerance. Like if you're suffering in some way, you're experiencing pain, like this isn't feeling good to me. This isn't working for me. How bad can you take it? Like, because there comes a breaking point. And then the consequence of the change also, you know, might impact how tolerant you are to the pain. It's like, leave medical school, don't leave medical school. Well, that's a monumental decision. At least it felt like it. So I'm going to deal with a lot of pain and suffering until the point where it's like, well, this is now an excessive amount of pain and suffering. I'm out. So Davey, I don't know where Davey's at. You know, maybe it's really frustrating him a lot. Maybe it's become the thing he thinks about every single day. It's like, and if that's the case, if like you're thinking about it every single day and it's constantly consuming your mind, like I think that's excessive. I don't think you know, it's time to take a leap. And then if it's an all or nothing leap, like I'm cutting the cord completely and I'm going a whole different route, like that makes it more scary. So you can choose to do that if you're in a high amount of pain and suffering, or you can be like, I'm just going to cut one thing, you know? And if it's, I followed the plan, then it's like, and the plan had you weighing and measuring every single thing, then it's like, hey, maybe for a little bit, or maybe it had you tracking everything in your app. Okay, so put the app away, but you can still eat kind of the same foods, just sort of, now you're going to like have to go a little bit by feel because you don't have the app to like track every last thing. Or maybe it's like you didn't weigh everything. Now you're just going to move to like eyeballing it, you know? So now you're not like measuring, and you take out the stress of like having the scale out. And so that might make a big difference and allow you to eat a little bit more intuitively. Like on a day where you're like really hungry, like your, you know, palm sized portion of protein is bigger than on a day where you're not that hungry. You know, it's the same palm size, but you're like, oh, I'm going to go for the little bigger palm. Like my palm's feeling pretty big today. So I'm pretty hungry.
I have those days.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like, oh, that's a tablespoon, right? I mean, it's in the tablespoon.
It's just piled.
Just
right?
a big old heaping tablespoon versus just the flat tablespoon. So those might be some ways to sort of make it feel less scary to jump, is back to the idea of like, one small change.
One thing at a time.
Yeah, one thing at a time.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think one other thought is just that I don't think anyone is going to have the same way of eating their entire life unless they're very much an outlier. I think that it's going to be expected that how you ate is not going to be how you will eat next year or later this year or a few years from now. So change is to be expected, but to feel safe and to feel certain, you can always go back to what worked and take it from there.
Yeah. And I think more than like go back to what worked, it's like, and we've talked about this before, like, well, what about the thing that I was doing before worked?
Yeah.
And this is what I'm continuing to like learn and for myself is, because I'm not immune to like the thought like, hey, this thing that I've been doing has been working for me, so I want to keep doing it. Like, I'm human in that way too. But I'm able to like look at it through a different lens of like, well, what about that thing that I was doing worked? Well, time restricted eating, because I was so committed to a time restriction on when I would eat or not eat, like, and if I got hungry in a window that was a non-eating window, I would willfully ignore that hunger. I would be like, no, that I'm not eating right now. Like, I'm not going to do that. Whereas, so what did time restricted eating do for me? It allowed me to really control for caloric consumption more so than now, where I don't have an eating window. And if I'm feeling a little hungry and I am cleaning up the kids' plate at night and there's, a big old pile of mango on it, like, I'm going to eat that. And, what that changes my caloric consumption a little bit. It's different. And so I can realize, I'm like, okay, if I'm feeling like drawn towards time restricted eating because it had an impact on my body or made me feel a particular way, it's like, well, it wasn't that. It was just it forced me, or I forced myself into a much more, controlled caloric consumption state. And this could be something that Dave evaluates. It's like, okay, what about this plan really helped me? Well, what was I eating before the RP plan? I wasn't eating enough. That's something I think he said. So it's like, okay, well, that's the thing that I need to be mindful of, is not eating enough. What are some tools that I can take from that to remind me to eat enough? Well, I'm going to make sure I get, a breakfast of this kind of quantity. I'm going to always have my, post-workout shake with me, because that always helped me. And I'm going to keep sticking to the bedtime snack, because that got me another 300 to 500 calories every day. And if I stick to those tools, like, I can make them whatever I want. I don't need to follow the script. Those were the biggest changes that really helped impact me and get me on a better path of eating enough. So it could just be evaluating, your plan, but looking at it like a little bit more thoughtfully and being like, why did the cottage cheese Fruit Loop, protein powder diet work for Marcus back then? Because it was the first time that I followed anything that kept my calories in check. That was it. Like, prior to that, I was eating like a very irresponsible 18-year-old. Like, I had a credit card.
College buffet.
Exactly. College buffet, credit card to go to Costco. Like, oh my gosh, like, those used to be like treats when I was a kid. Like, I can buy my own case right now. Done. Like, I'm having, all kinds of terrible, highly calorically dense things every day. And like, oh, now I'm following a diet that has like specific amounts. And like, lo and behold, 3 months later, I'm like much leaner. Must be the Fruit Loops and cottage cheese, right? It has to be that.
Right.
I have to eat that and the Kraft singles and the spelt bread. Like, if I don't eat that, I can't ever be lean. It's like, no, that was not, in hindsight, I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about that myself, because I also tend to be an undereater, and I was remembering, well, what was I doing at the time when I felt like I was really well-fueled and feeling strong? I was like, I was just drinking a protein shake after every workout. Got to get back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Solid. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, there are, and that's where like the food philosophy stuff started to really, feel worth talking about again was like, what are the anchor points to this thing that have worked for years and will continue to work for years, whether I'm, exploring eating organ meats and, cutting down on the amount of vegetables that I'm eating, or if I'm eating big ass salads and I'm eating chicken. Like, what's on every plate is this. This is what's on just about every plate.
Yep.
Yeah. Davey, I hope that helped you, ma'am.
Yeah.
And thank you for your email. If you got any follow-ups to this podcast or anything else that we said, please let us know.
Yeah. And we welcome all of your other questions, everyone out there.
Yeah. Questions can come in through our support inbox at functional-bodybuilding.com and or the good old-fashioned direct message on Instagram is a great place. Or throw it in a comment on YouTube. For those of you who are watching this YouTube episode, drop a comment below, ask your question. What would you like us to talk about on the next podcast?
That's right.
Thanks for watching and for listening, for those of you who are listening.
Thanks.